The Happy Prince, retold from the original by Oscar Wilde. Once upon a time there was a magnificent statue that stood in the middle of a large city square. It was the statue of a handsome prince, and it was covered from head to toe in fine gold leaf. For eyes he had two bright sapphires, and a large ruby sparkled on his golden sword. All who saw him admired him. He was the pride of the city. By day he always looked happy, so that all the people of the city called him the Happy Prince, and he was an inspiration to everyone. "Why can't you be like the Happy Prince?" mothers would tell their children whenever they cried. "The Happy Prince never cries for anything. He's always happy." "Well, at least someone in this world is happy," muttered a miserable man as he looked at the incredible gleaming statue. But the nights were a lonely time for the Happy Prince. All his visitors came to him in the daytime, until, one night, a swallow landed at his feet. "It's rather pleasant being bathed in this gold light," he said to himself, and then, just as he was tucking his head under his wing to go to sleep, a large drop of water fell on his head. The swallow shook the water out of his feathers. Another large drop of rain fell. "What use is this statue if it doesn't keep the rain off? I'd better go and find myself a chimney pot. That would shelter me better." But before he had a chance to fly away, another drop fell. The swallow looked up, and what did he see? The eyes of the Happy Prince were filled with tears. The tears were streaming down his cheeks. The Happy Prince looked so sad that the swallow was full of pity for him. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am the Happy Prince." "You don't look very happy," said the swallow. "Look, you've soaked my feathers with all your crying." "When I was alive and had a human heart, I didn't know what unhappiness was. During the day I played with my companions in the garden, and in the evening I would dance in the great hall. My courtiers called me the Happy Prince, and happy indeed I was. When I died they put this statue up in my memory, but they have set me up so high that I can see all the ugliness and all the misery of the city. Although my heart is made of lead, I cannot help weeping at all the misery I see." The swallow flew up onto the prince's shoulder. He sung to him to try and comfort him, but the tears kept on falling, and the prince started to tell the little bird a sad tale. "On the other side of this great city," he said, "there is a very sad family living in a poor house. When I look through the window I can see a woman seated at a table. Her face is thin and worn, and her hands are coarse after being pricked by the needle, for she is a seamstress. She is embroidering delicate flowers on a satin gown for one of the Queen's maids of honor to wear at the court ball. In a little bed in the same room a young boy is lying ill. He has a fever and is asking for oranges, but his mother has nothing to give him except river water. The poor little mite is crying out." "What a sad story," said the swallow, whose eyes were also filled with tears by now. "Swallow, oh lovely swallow, will you take her the ruby from my sword hilt? If I could, I would take it myself, but my feet are stuck to this pedestal, and I can't move a single inch." "I have friends waiting for me in Egypt," said the swallow. "They are flying up and down the Nile, talking to large lotus flowers and resting in the wonderful hot sun. I cannot stay here in this cold climate." "Swallow, little swallow," begged the prince, "please stay with me for just one night and be my messenger. The boy is so hungry and the mother so sad." "I don't think I like boys," answered the swallow. "Last summer when I was staying in the countryside, I was happily flying over one of the gardens when a group of rude boys threw stones at me. They didn't hit me, of course. We swallows fly far too well for that." But the swallow knew the prince hadn't been listening to him, and the prince looked so sad that he couldn't help taking pity on him. "All right, I will stay with you for just one night and be your messenger." "Thank you, little swallow," said the prince. Then the swallow did what the prince had asked him to do. He pecked the great ruby from the prince's sword and flew away with it in his beak over all the roofs of the city. On his way to the seamstress's house, the swallow passed by the cathedral tower with its beautiful marble angels. Then he flew over the royal palace, where he heard the sound of laughter and dancing. A beautiful girl came out onto the balcony. She was chatting to her friend. "Oh, I do hope my dress will be ready in time for the court ball. I have ordered exotic flowers to be embroidered on it, but you know seamstresses, they are all so lazy," she said. Then the swallow passed over the river and saw lanterns hanging to the masts of the ships. This made him feel homesick for Egypt. He knew it was just a sea journey away. At last the swallow came to the poorhouse and he peeped in through the window. The boy was tossing feverishly on his bed, and his mother, worn out with hard work, had fallen asleep. The little swallow flew gently around the boy's head, fanning the boy's hot forehead with his wings. "How cool I feel," said the boy. "I feel better than I've ever felt." Then the boy fell into a deep sleep. The precious jewel sat on the table, ready to surprise the boy and his mother when they both woke up. Then the swallow flew straight back to the happy prince and told him exactly what he had done. "It is very odd," remarked the swallow. "I feel quite warm now, even though it is bitterly cold outside." "That is because you have done a good deed," said the prince. And then the swallow began to think about what the prince had said, and he fell asleep because thinking always made him feel sleepy. The next day the swallow flew down to the river and had a bath. As he was cleaning himself, a bird watcher walked by. "How remarkable," he said, "a swallow in winter." And he wrote a long letter about it to a local newspaper. Everyone in the city talked about it the day after it was printed. "Tonight's the night I will go to Egypt," said the swallow, and he was very excited at the idea. Then he flew back to the happy prince. "I am off to Egypt," he said. "Swallow, lovely swallow," said the happy prince, "will you not stay with me for just one more night?" "But I have friends waiting for me in Egypt," the swallow told him. "Swallow, dear little swallow," said the happy prince, "if you fly far away across the city, you will see a young man in a garret. He is leaning over a desk that is covered with papers. He's a handsome young man with large dark eyes, and he is trying to finish a play for the director of the theatre, but his hands are so cold that he cannot write any more. There is no fire in the grate, and the lack of food has made him feel faint." The prince looked so sad that the swallow could not refuse his request. "All right, I will wait with you just one night longer," said the kind-hearted swallow. "Do you want me to take him another ruby?" "Sadly, I have no rubies left now," said the prince. "My eyes are all that I have left. They are made of sparkling deep blue sapphires, which were brought from India a long time ago. Pluck one of them out and take it to him. He will be able to sell it to the jeweller, buy firewood, and finish writing his play." "Dear prince," said the swallow, "I cannot do that," and he began to weep. "Swallow, swallow, dear little swallow," said the prince, "do as I command you." So the swallow plucked out the prince's eye and flew away to the student's garret. It was easy for him to get in, as there was a hole in the window. When the bird got into the room, the young man was talking to himself, so he didn't hear the flutter of the bird's wings. "Why can't I write?" he cried as he held the pen to the paper, and in despair he fell asleep. When the young man woke up the next morning, he found the beautiful sapphire lying on a bunch of withered violets. His eyes sparkled when he saw the lovely gem. "Well, it looks like I'm being appreciated at last," he cried. "This must be from some great admirer. With food in my belly and firewood on the fire, I know I'll be able to finish my play." And he looked happier than he had looked for a long time. The next day the swallow flew down to the harbour. He sat on the mast of a large vessel and watched sailors hauling in big tea chests. The little swallow was so excited when he saw the sailors that he cried out, "Wait for me, I'm coming with you." Once again the swallow had made up his mind. He was going to go to Egypt. He flew straight back to the happy prince. "I have come to say good-bye," he cried. "Swallow, swallow, dear little swallow," said the prince, "won't you stay with me just one more night?" "It is winter," said the swallow, "and soon the snow will be here. In Egypt the sun beats down on the lovely palm trees, and the crocodiles lie about in the mud. So you see, dear prince, I must leave you, but I will never forget you. Next spring I will bring back 2 beautiful jewels from the king of Egypt's palace to replace those you have given away." The happy prince then told the swallow another sad story. Down in the city square below there lives a little match girl. She has let her matches fall into the gutter, and they are soaked through. That poor, poor girl. Her father will beat her if she doesn't bring home any money, and the sad little girl is crying. She has no shoes or stockings, and the icy rain is making her very cold. Please pluck out the other sapphire and give it to her. Then her father will not beat her. The prince looked so sad that the swallow could not refuse. "Yes, all right. I will stay with you for just one more night," said the swallow, "but I cannot pluck out your other eye. You would be completely blind if I did that." "Swallow, swallow, dear little swallow," said the prince, "do as I command you." So he plucked out the prince's other eye and flew down to the square with it. He hovered above the little match girl and dropped the lovely jewel into her hand. "What a lovely bit of glass," said the little girl, and she ran home laughing. Then the swallow flew back to the prince. "You are blind now," said the swallow, "so I will stay with you always." And he went to sleep at the prince's feet. The next day the swallow sat on the prince's shoulder and told him incredible stories of the sights he had seen in strange lands. He told him of the exotic flowers on the banks of the Nile, of the Sphinx, who is as old as the world itself, and who knows everything about everything. "Dear little swallow," said the prince, "I love to hear the marvellous stories you tell me, but more marvellous than anything is the suffering of men and women. Misery is the greatest mystery of all. Fly over my city, dear little swallow, and tell me about all the things you see." So the swallow flew over the great city, and he saw the rich feasting in their grand houses, and the beggars sitting at the gates. "How hungry we are," they cried, as they huddled together and tried to keep warm. Then he flew back and told the prince what he had seen. "I have seen much poverty and much wealth," said the swallow. "I am covered in fine gold," said the prince. "You must take it off leaf by leaf and give it to all the poor people of this city." The swallow wasn't too happy about taking all the gold leaf away, but he did as the prince asked. Soon the prince looked very grey and very ordinary. The swallow took all the gold leaf to the poor, and soon the children looked healthy. For the first time in their lives they laughed and played games in the street. Then the snow came, and after the snow came the frost. The poor little swallow wasn't used to this cold weather, and he got colder and colder, but he would not leave the prince. He loved him too much. Desperate to keep warm, he just kept flapping his wings. But it was no use. He knew he was going to die. He had just enough strength to fly up to the prince's shoulder one more time. "Goodbye, dear prince," he cried, and as he kissed the prince for the last time, the little bird fell down dead. At that moment there was a crack inside the statue. The prince's lead heart had broken in two. Early the next morning, the mayor was walking in the square below with the town councillors. They all went to look at the statue. "Look, the ruby has fallen out his sword. He has no eyes and he is no longer golden," said the mayor. "In fact, he is no better than a beggar." "Yes, he's no better than a beggar," said the town councillors. "And look, there's a dead bird at his feet," continued the mayor. "We really must issue a proclamation that birds are not allowed to die here," said the town councillor. So they pulled down the statue of the happy prince. "We must have another statue, of course. Let's have a statue of me," said the mayor. "No, let's have one of me," said one of the other town councillors. "No, of me," another butted in. And soon all the town councillors were claiming that the statues should be of themselves. Back at the foundry, where the statue had been melted down, the overseer of the foundry was puzzled. "How strange," he said. "This broken lead heart just won't melt. We'll have to throw it away." So they threw it on a rubbish heap, where the dead swallow was lying. "Bring me the two most precious things in the city," said God to one of his angels, and the angel brought him the lead heart and the dead bird. "You have chosen well," said God, "for in my garden of paradise this bird shall sing for ever, and in my glorious city the happy prince shall never weep again." The end.